Hello and welcome to AgPhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, it won't be long in this field and we'll be thinking about the need for residual control late in the season in our soybeans. When we think about the different residual choices, we're mainly looking at broadleaf weed control, but you could get some boost on your grass control as well. We'll talk about what the options are.
We also want to talk about mid-season fungicide spraying in wheat. That flag leaf timing is tremendously important. That's the most valuable leaf on that wheat plant, so we want to talk about protecting it today.
Well, speaking of protection, you'll need to protect your fields from our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to stop this week's weed later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about corn root systems. You know, the most unusual thing for a lot of people when they start looking at these roots on the corn plant is that actually the vast majority began above where the seed's planted.
We have a lot of debate about that as corn is going in the ground. Guys will say, well, why is it so important that my planting depth is at a certain spot? And we talk about the root system development and how many of the roots are going to be above the seed. Well, even today, in this particular field where corn was planted over 12 months ago, we can still dig up corn stalks and tell you exactly where that planting depth was at. So there's no bluffing. Once you decide where you're going to plant, grass seed stays where it's put, and then the roots are going to develop around it. Now, when corn begins to develop, the first root that you're going to see is called the radical root.
Okay, so the radical root and then the seminal roots also will come right out of the seed. But after that, we've got the main root systems of the plant. They're called the nodal roots. There are 5 rings of nodal roots, and they're going to start above where that corn is planted, typically about 3/4 of an inch to an inch above where the seed was planted.
So this planting depth is really critical because the nodal roots, you want them to be below the soil surface. The nodal roots are the key point in our corn plant for bringing in water and bringing in nutrients, and they're going to have lots of root hairs that are going to develop. Now, if you keep those roots below the soil surface, you're going to do a great job finding nutrients in those top few inches of soil, and then of course the nodal roots will go much deeper in the soil as well, looking for water and for nutrients. However, if you have some of those nodal roots that are above ground, they're very good at taking things in. Now, they could take in a herbicide application, for example, and you're more likely to see crop injury if you have roots out above ground. The other thing that happens when you've got roots above ground is your anchor of that plant is not as good. So if we have a heavy rain, for example, maybe a 3 or 4 inch rain, followed by some real heavy winds, all of a sudden you could see some lodging in that cornfield that you may otherwise not have if that root system was deeper in the soil.
All a farmer's looking for is planting depth more than 1.5 inches deep. If it's more shallow than 1.5 inches, that's where some of these nodal roots will come out above ground. Now you might say, hey, wait a second, there are always some corn roots above ground. Yes, those are the brace roots. They're supposed to be above ground, and they only come as the result of stress. In other words, to help that plant support a big ear and big stalk and everything else, the brace roots do come out, especially when there's even a little bit of wind out there. Basically, that triggers the plant to say, ooh, I can't stand very well, I better put out some brace roots.
Corn has this huge root system, and when we think about the ability to get out there and explore more volume of soil to find nutrients, corn can do a great job at that. The other thing that I really like about that big extensive root system of a corn plant is if we can leave that in place, if we can avoid doing tillage, especially where that root mass is for the corn plant, you can grow your organic matter levels in your soil faster. These corn roots will start to decay in the soil, and where they do, they'll leave channels for water to move down and for earthworms and so forth to move around in the soil. It's great for your soil if you can leave that root mass intact. And when you think about that, well, man, how can I do it? I've got this cornfield with all this residue. We'll utilize strip tillage. So we still do a little bit of tillage, but we do it halfway in between last year's corn rows, so we try to leave those root balls intact.
The important thing here to understand is just that as farmers, we're trying to raise as many roots as possible, which ultimately leads us to as much overall crop as possible.
Well, you want all those roots in place because they're going to have to compete against our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
With new seed traits and chemistries entering the market, your crop protection equipment needs precision and adaptability. Hypro Innovative Spray Technologies has the products to give your applications greater accuracy, less drift, and more coverage. Hypro, right on technology, right on target.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
When you need one machine that can do it all, you send in a Spartan, your all-in-one forage solution from Capello, USA. This direct cutting system is the right machine for almost any forage crop and gets everything done in a single pass, keeps your costs down. Always versatile, the Spartan can be configured to fit any self-propelled forage harvester in the world. So, no matter what you forage, send in a Spartan from Capello, USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
I trust Agro Liquid because I've seen the results and they're positive and they work on my farm, they work in my environment. When I started farming, we was farming around 125 acres and now we're up to around 1,700 acres. I think I was recognized as the Tennessee Young Farmer by being a leader in the community and also being innovative. I'm always looking for new products, but I got to make sure that those products are sustainable. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and I would love for them to farm this land.
Compaction created during planting leaves thousands of dollars of potential yield in your fields. Copperhead Ag has developed the Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheel to close the seed trench more effectively. With a unique combination of closing power and control, the Furrow Cruiser provides earlier, more even emergence and higher stand counts, returning yield potential and putting profit back in your pocket. For more information on why you should never run a traditional closing system again, visit copperheadag.com.
As weed resistance becomes more of a problem across the country, your crop protection program needs to stay flexible to be effective. Hypro Innovative Spray Technologies' wide selection of spray tips and nozzle configurations are available to keep your crop protection program right on technology, right on target.
One of the big questions we've had from farmers over the last couple of years has been, how about using a residual herbicide in crop? Is that something that's worthwhile for my farm? Something like an Outlook or a Warrant or Dual. Should I be doing that?
Well, the first thing that I will say is I don't want to use a residual in crop in exchange for using one pre. I'd really like to get one out there pre-emerge and help that crop get off to a good weed-free start.
We would like to see the pre used pre, not used early post.
Okay, now there are a number of posts that can be used that have some residual control in soybeans. There are some powerful ones that can only be used pre, like for example Authority and Valor, the PPOs, Treflan, Sonland Prowl, the DNAs, and Metribuzin. Those can only be used pre. If you've got some of those left and you're thinking, hey, I didn't get that put on pre, I'd like to use it post. Nope, you can't do that. Sharpen would be another one. You cannot use that post. You'll burn or kill the beans. You don't want that to happen. So leave those pre ones for pre. But the Group 15s, for example, offer a great opportunity to put a residual on now in your soybeans post-emerge. So things like Warrant, for example, Outlook, Dual, Warrant Ultra, Anthem. There are a number of products that can be used in soybeans post to add to your residual control.
Let's start with, why do I need a residual herbicide early post if I already use a pre? Well, the whole thing is we've got Roundup resistant weeds now, and some of them are really tough. Let's talk about the two toughest, water hemp and Palmer pigweed, but then I'd throw in a third one, kochia. With all of those, if you don't get the pre on, you're in bad shape. We don't have any real great, inexpensive post-emerge products that are going to give you season-long control. It just doesn't work that way. So what a lot of guys are doing is they're putting the pre on, getting pretty good control there. But if they've got a long growing season, or if let's say they have lots of weeds in a particular field, they're saying, you know what, just getting the pre's on, that's going to give me 99% control, but that 1% of weeds, it's still a lot. It's still too many. So I want to throw in this dual, outlook, warrant, something like that to give me a little bit longer residual in season.
Well, you just need to extend that residual at least until you get crop canopy. And a lot of times that's not going to occur until July, depending on where you're at in the country. Now, if you're getting plentiful moisture, it could occur a little bit earlier. If you're in narrower row spacings, that canopy could happen a little bit earlier for you. But if you're in 30-inch rows or wider rows and you're further north and west in the country and you're getting less moisture, wow, who knows? It might be August or maybe never by the time your rows canopy in. So we've got to do something for control. And if you say, well, I don't really want to use a residual because of crop rotation or whatever, just understand this, you're going to be out there spraying several times during the season, and there aren't very many choices for some of the tough weeds like pigweed.
Let's talk specifically about what we want you to do. If you've already got a 3-pre program or some great residual program and you say, look, I think I'm good. I don't think I'm going to have anything come up. I don't have that many Roundup resistant weeds anyway, and I live quite a ways north. I don't have that long a growing season. You know what? This probably isn't that big a deal for you. If you're in the south, you've got a longer growing season, you've had issues with weeds, or if you didn't get 3 pre-emerge herbicides down, you maybe got 1 down and you say, well, I think it's going to be okay, 90-95% control. I'd at least try a few acres real early. So what you want to do is shortly after those beans come up, you go out there with Roundup like you normally would. You can throw in your Flex Star or whatever else you're tank mixing and try a dual, an outlook, a warrant, one of those products just to give you that extra residual over about the next month or two.
Products we're talking about here are group 15. They are shoot inhibitors, so they're not going to have contact activity for you, but they're going to get down into your soil, and with some moisture, they're going to attack that weed just as it's germinating. Here's where those group 15s can work for you. So we get a lot of questions about, well, should I put it in with my first pass of Roundup or Liberty, or should I put it in with my second pass? I would say you want to put it in early. You want to put it in with that first pass you're making across the field, because you're going to need to get it out there, get some moisture on it to get that stuff to work to begin with. Now, there are other residual herbicides that will have some burn down activity too. We may look at something like Flex Star. Flex Star is going to burn down weeds that are up, and that's what it's mainly known for, but it does have some soil residual activity too. Now, if you're using an extremely high rate of Flex Star, obviously you get a little bit longer window of control. For most farmers, they're trying to keep that Flex Star rate down because we've got a 10-month rotational window to corn, and a lot of those soybean acres end up being corn acres the following year, and guys just don't want to see any kind of carryover to the next crop.
So again, we would just encourage you, make sure if you don't have your beans planted yet, get the pre-emerge herbicide out there and get it out pre. Use a 3 pre if you really need to, otherwise 1 or 2 pre-emerge herbicides. If you need to extend your residual, if you've got lots of weeds, if you're in the south, you get a long growing season, then I'd at least try on a few acres one of these products that we're talking about, one of these group 15s, but do it early. Do it on your very first pass going over the field post-emerge.
But the question remains, will any of these residual herbicides stop our weed of the week? We'll show you what will coming up later in the show.
Compaction created during planting leaves thousands of dollars of potential yield in your fields. Copperhead Ag has developed the Furrow Cruiser spiked closing wheel to close the seed trench more effectively. With a unique combination of closing power and control, the Furrow Cruiser provides earlier, more even emergence and higher stand counts, returning yield potential and putting profit back in your pocket. For more information on why you should never run a traditional closing system again, visit copperheadag.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Apply Gypsoil on your farm to add cost-effective sulfur to soils and improve soil structure. Gypsoil increases calcium and helps flush excess magnesium in tight soils, improve air and water infiltration, and reduce problem wet spots and crusting. Better soil quality means better water quality, so Gypsoil is good for the environment too. For more information about putting Gypsoil to work on your farm, call 866-GYPSOIL or 497-7645. Visit online at gypsoil.com.
Are you storing grain in your bin from last harvest? You will want to avoid running your bin fans when the air is warm and wet to avoid sprouting and spoilage. The AgriDry Bullseye Controller has the capability to automatically run your fans when the weather conditions are safe for quality grain control. Stop monitoring the weather or babysitting your bins and let the Bullseye Controller keep your grain safe. Visit agridryllc.com to find your local dealer today.
There are trillions of hardworking microbes right beneath your feet. Today, Monsanto BioAg is harnessing the power of microbes, creating microscopic farmhands that help plants access nutrients, enhance root and shoot growth, and handle stressful conditions throughout the season, protecting and maximizing your yield potential. We're turning 500 trillion microbes into 500 trillion new farmhands, ready for work. Nature, it's powerful technology.
We talk about wheat fungicides actually quite a bit because there are 3 really good timings for spraying fungicide in wheat. Herbicide timing, heading timing, and actually the timing that probably has the best yield gain is the timing that the fewest farmers do. It's flag leaf.
When I think about what are we doing with these fungicides, we're trying to protect the leaf foliage from disease. Because once you have disease, it's going to wipe out some of the ability of that plant to catch sunlight energy and turn that ultimately into yield. So in order to do that, we've got to put it on preventatively. We have to get it out there in front of the disease pressure. So we have to anticipate that, hey, you know what, the weather is shaping up like we're going to have disease. There's disease maybe further south in the country, that the winds are coming this way and they're going to bring that disease along. Whatever the case may be, we've got to anticipate when those critical times are. At flagleaf, we know that that main leaf is responsible for up to about 80% of the wheat's yield. It's just critical. So we have to protect it. Much like the ear leaf in corn, it's critical that that leaf can catch plenty of sunlight to feed the head. To protect the flag leaf, we've got to look at which different fungicide option we can do, and then also think about the coverage and the way to best make that fungicide useful for the plant.
All right, Darren mentioned which fungicide can you use. Your options are still wide open at flagleaf. Okay, at heading timing, you can't go in with a strobilurin product. You have to use just a straight triazole. So at heading, then you've got some of your options off the table. But at flagleaf, you can still do anything you want. What a lot of people have been doing here over the last few years is using one of these, what we would call combination products. They have 2 different modes of action in them, something like a Stratego Yield or a Twin Line. Getting a couple different chemical families out there is good to broaden the spectrum, to reduce the chance for disease resistance.
Okay, the other thing too, Brian mentioned at heading, we're going to use straight triazoles. The main products there, Prosaro, Caramba, Folicure. Since we're going to use those at heading, we don't want to use those at flagleaf. And I know there's some bad information around the country saying, well, why don't you just spray those now? Because are you really going to come back in 10 days and spray at heading? Let's just use those products now. They'll give you some protection against head scab, for example. Hey, look, they will protect the leaves that are out from rust and some other diseases. You're not going to get protection from head scab by putting something on at flagleaf. So at flagleaf, you do have a number of choices, including those combo products Brian was just talking about. At heading, there's just those 3 triazole products that are mainly getting used, so save those for later application.
Darren also mentioned coverage. What are you going to do for coverage? Well, here's the big thing. Fungicides don't move very well in the plant at all. That means we would like to see you use 15 to 20 gallons of water, and I would like to see you use the flat fan nozzles. That's going to give you the smallest droplet, the best spray coverage. That's really what we're after. We've even seen it in demonstrations where they'll say, all right, look, remember that in the plant, the xylem is what moves fungicide. So if you don't treat the lower part of a leaf, the lowest part of the leaf won't be protected because the fungicide can only move upward in a leaf, it can't move back downward. So if you only have enough spray coverage to get the tops of the leaves covered and you think, oh, I got some on every leaf, well, that'd be good enough if you were spraying Roundup to kill a plant or Banville to kill a plant. It's not good enough when you're spraying a fungicide. You have to cover every little bit of that leaf if you want every little bit of that leaf protected from disease.
All right, so my last couple of points here. We want to wait till that flag leaf is fully emerged, just like Brian was saying. So let that flag leaf emerge, then time your spraying accordingly. The other thing is there's some really good products out there. So you may say, well, which one's the best? Brian mentioned this Stratego and he mentioned Twin Line and there's some others. Look, there's not that much difference between the products. The big difference is either using a fungicide or not. Flagleaf is the timing that the fewest amount of wheat farmers are using, and the universities say it's the one where we're getting the most yield gain. So if you've got some protection that needs to get put out there, do it now at Flagleaf this year and choose one of these good products from many that you have to choose
Here's,
from.
I guess, one last thing I would say too. If you need to go out and do this aerially, then get it done. In the future, take a look at tram lines. That's what we have on our farm. That's what we suggest you have. That allows you to go back out there and spray whenever you want without having to run the wheat down, because that gets to be a big consideration for a lot of guys. And timing is so critical with these fungicides. You can't wait a week to have somebody else come in and spray. You have to spray today.
Speaking of spray application timing, our Weed of the Week has a critical timing too. Spray it when it's small or it gets really tough. We'll show you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Weed of the Week is Buckbrush. Now this is one of those, what I would consider pasture and non-crop land types of weeds that can be a little bit of a challenge. You're out there spraying thistles or you're spraying some other broadleaf type weed. Then you come upon this buckbrush, this woody species. It's a perennial that can be really difficult.
All right, so when I first became an agronomist, my dad talked to me about buckbrush because he said, look, a lot of guys are going to be out spraying 2,4-D, and it'll burn down a lot of stuff, but it's not that great. But he said, look, if you want to spike that 2,4-D up, throw a quart of crop oil in per acre with that, and we do that even today. So if you're going to go out there with LV6, we'd probably recommend quart and a half of LV6, throw a quart of crop oil in, and yup, you're going to have a little bit of burn on your grass. But you'll then have better activity on this buckbrush. Now, the trouble with doing this is you think right away, oh, 2,4-D is cheap. Yep, I want to go cheap. Well, have you seen what's happened with the price of Tordon now? You could go out there with a pint of Tordon for similar money to a quart and a half of LV6 and oil. So which would I rather have? I'd absolutely rather have the pint of Tordon.
That isn't even a choice. You get these woody species. That's where Tordon just steps way away from 2,4-D. And also with Tordon, what I like about it is it has the ability of getting down into that root system and moving through the root system.
Now, like I say, you could go out there with a pint, but what I would do is I'd have a rate 1 and a rate 2. If I could have my rate 2 at a quart, then anytime you get to a buckbrush patch or a leafy spurge patch or a thistle patch, you just kick it up to rate 2 and bam, there you go. But all I'm trying to say is this. Hey, at a pint, we're going to do pretty darn good. We're going to have some residual. That's nice. We should be able to stop that buckbrush. But boy, at a quart, now we're talking permanent control.
Okay, now there are some specialty products that do pretty well on brush type species. But a lot of times on our show, you'll hear us talk about Milestone, Tordon, and 2,4-D. And the reason why is because these products are so broad spectrum that you're going to get a lot of the different weed species that are out there. If you've got thistles, we like Milestone. If you've got some of this brush and some thistles and leafy spurge, Tordon's great. Otherwise, like Brian said with 2,4-D, a lot of guys will just try to get by with 2,4-D. Hey, I could do a lot of stuff out here and there's no residual. So hey, if I choose to till this ground up and next year I'm going to try to crop farm it, I don't have any carryover that I'm gonna have to worry about like something like Tordon and Milestone having.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week buckbrush, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
The experience from the salesman to the building crew all the way through was just pleasant and professional.
I feel that the people at Morton are my friends. I'll do anything for them because I felt they met that with me.
I wouldn't have anybody build me a building other than Morton. I wouldn't even consider anybody else.
It pays to go look around, but by far Morton's got the best building and we're just so pleased with it.
Contact Morton Buildings today during our Building Value Days sales event. Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon-D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
We've been dealing with AgriLiquid a little over 7 years. I was skeptical, to be honest, but I watched the results from several clients. Those results were increased production and reduction in input cost. With AgriLiquid, we saw an increase in the size of the initial root mass. For ranchers, that means forage production a lot quicker. AgriLiquid works. The bottom line is profitability.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
Technology is constantly changing the way we farm. Hypro innovative spray technologies are here to keep your farm at the forefront of agricultural innovation. With spray application equipment for any scenario, Hypro is here to put you right on technology, right on target.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
With spring rains come mud, at least for a little while, and stuck equipment. We'll talk about why your neighbor always gets stuck and what you can do to avoid the same result on your farm in today's Iron Talk. Did you ever notice that the same people are always getting their sprayers stuck on the wet years? Sure, maybe they could have waited an extra day or two, but there are really some big differences from one machine to the next. Let me explain. Consider self-propelled sprayers. There are some big differences. Some have booms out in front of the machine, while others have booms in the back. Some have the engine out front, and others have it behind the cab. The size and positioning of the spray tank is also a big consideration. But when it comes to getting stuck in a mud hole, the term weight distribution is one that you should pay attention to on your farm. There's a big difference from one brand of sprayer to the next. By shifting more weight to the rear axle as you travel through soft and wet soil, your rear end of equipment is much more likely to sink and eventually get stuck. Sprayers that balance the weight equally from front to back and from side to side are much less likely to find the bottom of a mud hole. Before you take your sprayer to the field next time, run it across a scale. Look at where the weight is distributed. It may just change your perspective, and it will definitely help improve your performance. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for AgPhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune into the AgPhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next AgPhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching AgPhD.
While the population of our planet grows each year, the amount of farmland we have to grow food for everyone becomes less. According to the USDA, farmers will need to produce as much food in the next 40 years as they have in the last 500. To learn how they are doing it sustainably, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.